Hello, welcome to chapter 8 of The Billionaire Boy, called The Witch. Dring! The bell is a signal for me, not you, said Miss Spite sharply. Teachers love saying that. It's one of their catchphrases, as I'm sure you know. The all-time top 10 of teachers' catchphrases goes like this. At 10, walk, don't run. A non-mover at 9, are you chewing? Up 3 places to 8, I can still hear talking. A former number 1 at 7, it doesn't need discussion. A new entry at 6, how many times do you need to be told? Down 1 place at 5, spelling. Another non-mover at 4, I will not tolerate litter. New at 3, do you want to pass your exams? Just missing the top spot at 2, would you do that at home? And still at number 1, it's not just yourself that you've let down, but the whole school. Taking the history lesson was Miss Spite. Miss Spite smelt of rotten cabbage. That was the nicest thing about her. She was one of the school's most feared teachers. When she smiled, she looked like a crocodile that was about to eat you. Miss Spite loved nothing more than giving out punishments, once suspending a girl for dropping a pea on the floor of the school canteen. That pea could have had someone's eye out, she had yelled. Kids at the school had fun thinking up nicknames for their teachers. Some were fond, others were cruel. Mr. Paxton, the French teacher, was Tomato, as he had a big round red face like a tomato. The headmaster, Mr. Dust, was called the Tortoise, as he looked like one. He was very old, extremely wrinkly, and walked impossibly slowly. The deputy head, Mr. Underhill, was Mr. Underarms, as he ponged a bit, especially in the summer. And Mrs. MacDonald, the biology teacher, was called either the Bearded Lady or even Hairy McClary from Donaldson's Dairy, as she, well, I imagine you can guess why. But the kids just called Miss Spite the Witch. It was the only name that really ever fitted and was passed down through generations of pupils at the school. All the kids she taught passed their exams though. They were too scared not to. We still have the small matter of last night's homework, Miss Spite announced with an evil relish that suggested she was desperate for someone to have failed to do it. Joe reached into his bag. Disaster. His exercise book wasn't there. He had spent all night writing this intensely boring 500-word essay about some old dead queen, but in the rush to get to school on time, he must have left it on his bed. Oh no, he thought. Oh no, 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 no. Joe looked over at Bob, but all his friend could do was grimace sympathetically. Miss Spite stalked the classroom like a Tyrannosaurus Rex deciding which little creature it was going to eat first. To her evident disappointment, a field of grubby little hands held aloft essay after essay. She gathered them up before stopping at Spud. Miss, he stammered. Yes, Spud, said Miss Spite, drawing out her words as long as possible so that she could relish this delicious moment. I did do it, but... Oh, yes, of course you did it, the witch cackled. All the other pupils except Bob sniggered too. There was nothing more pleasurable than seeing someone else get into trouble. I left it at home. Litter duty, the teacher snapped. I'm not lying, miss, and my dad will be at home today. I should have known. Your father is clearly penniless and on the dole, sitting at home watching daytime TV. Much as you will no doubt be doing in 10 years' time, yes? Joe and Bob couldn't help but share a smirk at this. Said Joe, if I called him and asked him to run the essay over here, would you believe me? Miss Spite smiled broadly. She was going to enjoy this. Spud, I will give you 15 minutes exactly to place said essay in my hand. I hope your father is quick. But, started Joe. No buts, boy. 15 minutes. Well, thank you, miss, said Joe sarcastically. You're quite welcome, said the witch. I like to think that everyone gets a fair chance to rectify their errors in my class. She turned to the rest of the class. The rest of you are dismissed, she said. Kids started to spill out onto the corridor. Miss Spike leaned after them and screamed, "Walk, don't run!" Miss Spike couldn't resist another catchphrase. She was the queen of the catchphrase, and now she couldn't stop. "It doesn't need discussion," she called after her pupils randomly. Miss Spike was on a roll now. "Are you chewing?" she hollered down the corridor to a passing school inspector. 15 minutes, miss, said Jo. Miss Spud studied her little antique watch. 14 minutes, 51 seconds, in point of fact. Jo gulped. Was Dad going to be able to get there that fast? Chapter 9. Finger? Finger? Asked Bob as he offered half of his Twix to his friend. Thank you, mate, said Jo. They stood in a quiet corner of the playground and contemplated Jo's bleak fate. What are you going to do? I don't know. I texted my dad, but there's no way he can get here in 15 minutes. What can I do? A few ideas raced through Jo's mind. He could invent a time machine and travel back in time and remember not to forget his homework. It might be a bit hard to do, though, as if time machines had ever been invented, then maybe someone would have come back from the future and prevented Piers Morgan's birth. Jo could go back to the classroom and tell Miss Spike that the tiger had eaten it. This would only be half a lie, as they did have a private zoo and a tiger called Jeff, and an alligator called Jenny. Become a nun, he would have to live in a nunnery and spend his days saying prayers and singing hymns and doing general religious stuff. On the other hand, the nunnery would give him sanctuary from Miss Spite, and he did look good in black. But on the other hand, it might get a bit boring. Go and live on another planet? Venus is nearest, but it might be safer to go to Neptune. Live the rest of his life underground? Perhaps even start a tribe of below the surface of the earth dwellers and create a whole secret society of people who all owed Miss Spike some homework. Have plastic surgery and change his identity? Then live the rest of his life as an old lady called Winnie? Become invisible? Jo wasn't sure how this might be achieved. Run to the local bookshop and buy a copy of How to Learn Mind Control in 10 Minutes by Professor Stephen Haste and very quickly hypnotise Miss Spite into thinking he had already given in his homework. Disguise himself as a plate of spaghetti bolognese. Bribe the school nurse into telling Miss Spite that he'd died. Hide in a bush for the rest of his life. He could survive on a diet of worms and grubs. Paint himself blue and claim to be a Smurf. Jo had barely had time to consider these options when two familiar shadows loomed behind them. Bob, said one of them in a voice neither high nor low enough to determine its gender. The boys turned round. Bob, tired of fighting, simply handed him the slightly nibbled finger of Twix. Don't worry, he whispered to Jo. I've concealed a large number of Smarties down my sock. We don't want your Twix, said Grub number 1. No, said Bob. His mind started racing. Could the Grubs possibly know about the Smarties? No, we wanted to say we're very sorry for bullying you, said Grub number 2. And as a peace gesture, we'd like to invite you round for tea, prompted Grub number 1. Tea? Asked Bob, incredulous. Yes, and maybe we could all play Hungry Hippos together, continued Grub number 2. Bob looked at his friend, but Jo just shrugged. Thank you, guys. I mean, guy and girl, obviously. Obviously, said an unidentified Grub. But I'm a bit busy tonight, continued Bob. Maybe another time, said a Grub as the twins lolloped off. That was weird, said Bob, retrieving some Smarties that now had a faint taste of sock. I couldn't imagine a night where I would want to go and play Hungry Hippos with those two, even if I lived until I was 100. How strange, said Jo. He glanced down very quickly. At that moment, a deafening roar silenced the playground. Jo looked up. A helicopter was hovering overhead. Very quickly, all the football games broke up, and the kids raced out of the way of the descending aircraft. Items from hundreds of packed lunches were whisked up in the air by the force of the blades. Packets of Quavers, a mint chocolate aero, even a Muller fruit corner danced around in the whirling air before smashing on the ground as the engine shut down and the blades slowed to a stop. Ooh, I wonder who it is that's turned up in that helicopter, We'll have to wait and find out tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.